Hi, and welcome to this 20th video of 2021, and we're going to talk now about what I call St. Thomas Aquinas' advice for coping with a pandemic. Now, clearly, in the Summa Theologia, St. Thomas Aquinas doesn't have any articles or any questions that deal with a pandemic directly, but I think in light of what's going on in our culture right now and how the world has responded to this pandemic in 2020 and also in 2021, this is an important question because even though St. Thomas doesn't address it directly, he does have basic principles and ideas throughout the Summa that I think give us an idea of how we can best cope with what's going on in our culture today. Okay, so let's get right to it. And first of all, to understand how we respond to what's happening in the culture today, we have to understand nature. It's what I call one of the three themes overall of the Summa Theologia, the other two being teleology and epistemology. But let's focus on nature right now. And what this means is that every creature has a nature, something that is unique about it. It's related to essence, but it has to do with operation. What does a creature do? Okay, for example, a dog barks, a dog wags its tail, it has four legs, right? It pants, it does a lot of things that are unique. Okay, that's the nature of a dog. It's different than the nature of a bird. Birds fly, birds have typically, I think, always two legs, and they have a beak. And a salmon is very different. It swims, swims upstream, and it has its own nature. And then there are the human beings, us. Okay, we have a very different nature and a different operation than any of these other creatures. Okay, so how does this relate to the pandemic? Well, hold on. I'm going to get to that in just a minute. But I first of all want to go back to the first article of the Summa. I love going back to this because this is important, because when St. Thomas Aquinas sits down and starts writing the Summa, and he's going to have 3,000 articles, and I think he pretty much had it all laid out in his head as he started. The very first thing that he wanted to talk about was whether besides philosophy any further doctrine is required. Now, what he's talking about here is that other than what we can come to know through our human reason, is anything else necessary? And he says, and I will tie this into the pandemic, I promise, it was necessary for man's salvation that there should be a knowledge revealed by God besides philosophical science built up by human reason. Firstly, indeed, because man is directed to God as to an end that surpasses the grasp of reason. The eye hath not seen, O God, besides thee what things thou hast prepared for them that wait for thee. But the end first must be known by men who are to direct their thoughts and actions to the end. Hence it was necessary for the salvation of man that certain truths which exceed human reason should be made known to him by divine revelation. Okay, so right off the bat, Thomas Aquinas is saying we need to live lives directed to our final end, and not temporal ends, our final end, which is beatitude, which is heaven with God. Okay, let's go back to the nature question again. Okay, so Thomas asks in the first part of the Summa, question 75, article 2, whether the human soul is subsistent. And by that he means, does it exist? And more importantly, does it continue in existence after the death of the particular creature, in this case, the human being? All right, now, all these creatures we talked about a moment ago, if in an instant they all died, okay, only one of these species would continue to exist as separated souls. And that's what we mean by subsistence, right? And that's why the Summa Theologia is about the human being and God, and us getting back to God. And that's why this is what we really need to focus ourselves on, is our final end, eternity, right? And not temporal things. So in regard to the subsistence of the human soul, he says it must necessarily be allowed that the principle of intellectual operation, which we call the soul, is a principle both incorporeal and subsistent. Okay, incorporeal means outside of the body. Okay, therefore, the intellectual principle, which we call the mind or the intellect, has an operation per se apart from the body. Now, only that which subsists can have an operation per se. The ancient philosophers made no distinction between sense and intellect and referred both to a corporeal principle, but Aristotle held that the operation of the soul, understanding alone, is performed without a corporeal organ. Hence it is clear that the sensitive soul has no per se operation of its own, and that every operation of the sensitive soul belongs to the composite. The sensitive soul, we have a sensitive soul. Our soul has a sensitive component to it. But he's talking about dogs and cats and earthworms and fish, right? When they die, they die. And if that was us, then we should put a lot of emphasis on this world. We should put a lot of emphasis on our health and our physical well-being in this world. But Thomas keeps saying throughout the Summa, that's not what our life is about, right? Okay, wherefore we conclude that as the souls of brute animals have no per se operation, they are not subsistent, for the operation of anything follows the mode of its being. Isn't that beautiful? All right, so let's move on and talk about what makes man happy. I would say that if you watch the news these days and you just see what are people talking about, what's making us happy, right? We're happy if we're healthy. That's basically the message. We got to put those face masks on, us and our kids, and everybody's got to be protected, okay? And we got to stay away from each other. We got to social distance. We got to make sure we don't get within 6 feet of somebody because they might get us sick, right? Because we got to protect that health that we have. We got to remain healthy, right? Because it seems like that's all we got. And then we got the vaccine, and everybody's got to take this vaccine and protect your life and protect everybody else, right? It's an obsession with the here and now. It's an obsession with our physical health, and I don't think that is something that St. Thomas Aquinas would have seen to be healthy, or certainly of God. So in the first part of the second part of the Summa, Prima Secunda it's called, St. Thomas Aquinas says, what makes us happy? He asked that question. Is it wealth? Is it honors? Fame, glory, power, any bodily good? He asks all these questions, individual questions, right? Pleasure, all these things. He says, no, 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 no. They can give us some, participation in happiness, but ultimately they're not going to make us happy. Either is our physical health, and so we can't obsess about it, right? And then he says in question 3, article 8, whether man's happiness consists in the vision of the divine essence, right? So the question is that we have to ask ourselves during a pandemic, is it this that's going to make us ultimately happy, or is it this? Okay, is it something that we are looking forward to with hope, and we have faith in it, and we hope to rest in it through charity? And so let me read this. This is kind of long, but this is very important, okay? Because to understand this whole idea of dealing with a pandemic, final and perfect happiness can consist in nothing else than the vision of the divine essence. To make this clear, 2 points must be observed. First, that man is not perfectly happy so long as something remains for him to desire and seek. That's important, because even if we get our shots, and even if we think we're protected and COVID isn't going to get us and we're not going to give it to anybody else, we're still not happy. We're still needing things, and we're still going to die, right? I mean, it's not ultimately going to save us. We're going to die eventually anyways, right? Secondly, that the perfection of any power is determined by the nature of its object. Now, the object of the intellect is what a thing is, the essence of a thing. Wherefore, the intellect attains perfection insofar as it knows the essence of a thing. If therefore an intellect knows the essence of some effect, whereby it is not possible to know the essence of the cause, that is, to know what the cause is, that intellect cannot be said to reach the cause simply, although it may be able to gather from the effect the knowledge of what that cause is. Consequently, when man knows an effect and knows that it has a cause, there naturally remains in the man the desire to know about the cause, what it is. And this desire is one of wonder and causes inquiry. For instance, if a man, knowing the eclipse of the sun, consider that it must be due to some cause and knows not what that cause is, he wonders about it, and from wondering proceeds to inquiry, right? Nor does this inquiry cease until he arrive at a knowledge of the essence of the cause. All right, so how does this all relate? Let me try to wrap this up. We, in our culture today, are pretty much living, most people, obsessed with physical health. How am I going to stay alive, and how am I going to protect everybody, and how am I going to keep myself healthy and preserved, right? But we're still going to die anyways. The focus has been on us and not on God. St. Thomas Aquinas is saying is that we observe in the world all this really cool stuff, like dogs and babies and the love of each other, the human touch, the affection, the emotion, cool things like spider webs and planets and butterflies, and most especially the sacraments that I show there in that middle picture, right? These all, the Eucharist is Jesus himself, right? But all these other things are effects. And we wonder, what is the cause? And it makes us think about God, right? And we're thinking about our final end because one day we want to be with God. And so there's two ways of dealing with a pandemic. We focus on ourselves, we focus on our health, protecting ourselves, preserving everybody else around us, obsessing about it, or we focus our lives on our eternal end, which is God himself, and spend lives joyfully seeking God, being with people, enjoying people, loving people, and realizing, you know what, we're going to die one day anyways. Let's enjoy life focused on our final end, okay? That's St. Thomas Aquinas' advice for coping with a pandemic, at least my interpretation of how he would advise we cope with the pandemic of 2021. God bless you. Thanks for watching.